Vincent van Gogh came to Provence in February 1888. He sought the intense light of the south of France, which makes colors vibrant. A dissolute life in Paris over the previous 2 years had left him sick and wasted. Here in Provence is the restoring heat of a climate where cicadas thrive. Here is a lifestyle more unhurried and balanced, and cheerfully sociable. When Vincent came to Provence, he cherished a dream. He wanted to establish a community of artists here. He saw himself as the advance guard, eager to set up what he called a studio of the South. Vincent was 34 and passionately optimistic. But his history to date did not promise well for the future. He had failed to hold a succession of jobs, including assistant art dealer, school teacher, and clerk in a bookshop. Rejection in love had caused emotional breakdowns. He had alienated his family by living with a prostitute. And when his deep compassion for the poor was combined with religious obsession, he became a preacher, gave away all his possessions, dressed in rags, and slept on the floor of a hut. Vincent was in his late 20s before he redirected his fanaticism to painting. By then, he was clearly eccentric, in poor physical health, and prone to melancholy. Socially, he was inept, and was too intense and demanding to sustain friendships. Here in Provence, as in previous years, he was financially dependent on his brother Theo, who was also his emotional lifeline. In return, Vincent sent his paintings to Theo, an art dealer in Paris, one of very few to understand his genius. Vincent van Gogh's hopes of Provence were to fail tragically at a personal level. Yet it was here that he would create his finest paintings. Only after his death did they receive worldwide recognition and give great pleasure, not least here in the region which inspired them.
Alors, il faut les dégager. Alors, on peut les arranger autour, voyez.
Spring in Provence. Vincent recently arrived, delighted in the blossom of the fruit trees around Arles, the small town on the Rhône where he now lived. He was soon in a frenzy of work. While painting the delicate brilliance and the pure southern light, he was excited to be capturing the same qualities which he so admired in Japanese prints. Some 16 paintings were completed in the short weeks before the blossom faded. The roads around Arles were once country lanes, where Vincent became a familiar figure. The strong light drew him to explore the effects he could achieve with brilliant colors applied thickly, complementary colors which each enhanced the intensity of the other, blues and oranges, greens and reds, purples and yellows. Yet this painting of the artist on his way to work portrays a solitary little figure with a prominent dark shadow attached to his heels. Longloi Bridge reminded Vincent both of Japanese prints and of his native Holland. He was particularly pleased with this cheerful painting. Around this time, however, he wrote tellingly to Theo, "I'm doing very well down here, but it is because I have my work here, and nature, and if I didn't have that I would grow melancholy for loneliness, worries, difficulties, the unsatisfied need for kindness and sympathy. That is what is hard to bear." Vincent moved his easel to fields of wheat, which in Provence is ripe by June. Here, the Roman arena makes the town of Arles easily recognizable on the skyline. Hatched brush strokes bring the wheat to life in many hues of gold, red, green, and yellow. Vincent also painted in Arles. For example, the gate and main avenue of the public park in the town centre. At that time, townsfolk looked at him askance. Later, they became proud that he had lived and painted here. Vincent rented rooms in a little yellow house with green shutters. He had set his heart on persuading the painter Paul Gauguin to join him here. They would start to establish the community of artists of which he dreamt. The yellow house was destroyed by a bomb in 1945. Now it exists entirely in his paintings, with vivid colors which capture its essence as he experienced it. In this bright picture, we see the intense joy of the dream which he cherished. The original house is now replaced by an unprepossessing tobacconist's cum snack bar, today closed. Vincent's most widely known and loved paintings are the Sunflower series. Sunflowers encapsulated the southern light which he loved. They stood for hope and for joy. He intended painting dozens of sunflower panels, framed in orange, to be hung in the yellow house in anticipation of Paul Gauguin's arrival. He would bring the sunshine right inside the yellow house. And as he worked every morning from sunrise, his elation grew and grew. In fact, Vincent van Gogh was able to complete only 4 paintings in August 1888, before the sunflowers died. Gauguin failed to arrive. For 2 months, Vincent tried to control his mounting anxiety through intensive work. Here, on the bank of the Rhone, he painted Starry Night, contrasting the harsh reflections of the gas lighting with the gentler starlight of the Great Bear. Vincent overspent his allowance to have the picture framed, surviving for 4 days on bread and coffee. In Provence, there are still fine days in October, a reminder of summertime. On the 23rd, Gauguin arrived, reluctant, but probably persuaded by Theo van Gogh, who was his art dealer. For some weeks, Vincent's expectations were realized. He had the company of a fellow artist of high caliber. There were long, productive conversations about art, and they went out together to paint. One location was the strangely atmospheric Les Aliscons, a Roman burial site in Arles. But as winter set in, and the two very different personalities were increasingly confined within the Yellow House, relationships deteriorated. Constructive discussion now turned into bitter quarrels. On the 23rd of December, crisis was reached. When Gauguin left the house in the evening, he was followed by Vincent, who threatened him. 15 years later, Gauguin claimed that he was wielding a razor. Gauguin, alarmed, spent the night in a hotel and then left for Paris. Meanwhile, Vincent cut off part of his earlobe and delivered it to a prostitute in a nearby brothel. Next morning, the police were sent for. They found Vincent bleeding profusely, and he was admitted to the hospital in Arles. The hospital building is today a gallery for display of paintings, renamed the Espace Van Gogh. Early in the new year of 1889, Vincent returned to his own home in the Yellow House. He had been treated for the physical effects of self-mutilation, not the mental causes. Surprisingly, perhaps, he painted sunflowers again, using his own earlier works as models. By March, he was back in the hospital, following a public petition for committal from neighbors who were by then afraid of this mad painter. He had been experiencing depression, bouts of paranoia, and hallucinations. The Yellow House was finally barred to him. April came round again. From the hospital, Vincent painted once more the blossom of the fruit trees and skyline of Arles, with the tower of Saint-Trophime. Between the painter and the landscape, however, he introduced gnarled, unsightly poplar trunks. This ugly barrier now kept him apart from what he loved. Not far from Arles, across the Rhône, lies the area of the Alpilles. Vincent moved here as a voluntary psychiatric patient. He suffered intermittent bouts of severe illness, which have been variously attributed to epilepsy, schizophrenia, hereditary insanity, or the later stages of syphilis. He found care in a hospital attached to the church of Saint-Paul-de-Maussol, near Saint-Rémy-de-Provence. Today, visitors can enter the serenity of the church and cloisters. The other buildings and grounds familiar to Vincent van Gogh may only be glimpsed because this is still a psychiatric hospital. During his spells of illness, the longest lasting 2 months, Vincent was confined to his room, and his paints were removed because he tried to swallow them. He would then progress to the grounds with their pine trees and the stone benches, which are still found in the vicinity. Vincent's palette was now much darker than during the heady days in Arles. Darker, but very rich. Here, the tree trunks draw the blue of the sky into the confining garden. This time, the building with yellow walls and green shutters is a mental institution. Walls surround the grounds of Saint-Paul-de-Mosol. In paintings from his window, Vincent contrasted a little wheat field inside the walls with an alluring world beyond. Harvest time and the little figure laboring hard may represent Vincent himself with his relentless dedication to his art. Beyond the wall are attractive homesteads. But the whole painting shows the small figure overwhelmed by the mountain and a very disturbed sky. Today, the area around Saint-Paul-de-Mosol remains unspoilt. When he was able, Vincent explored here, accompanied by an attendant. Nearby, there are old quarry workings, which sometimes he painted. They pull attention downwards, reflecting his distress. They draw us away towards darkness. Venturing further, he painted a ravine, surrounding its depth with swirling brushstrokes of tumultuous despair. The home farm of Saint-Paul-de-Mosol still stands. Vincent's painting of 1889 shows it with the jagged hill behind. Today, from the viewpoint in the painting, the hill is completely hidden. The area has become woodland. Here, the cypress is the most imposing tree, solid, fat, then tapering high towards the sky, of a blackness made up of many tones of green, blue, yellow. Vincent felt drawn to the cypresses. His were alive with agitation, individual branches writhing outwards towards a churning, vertiginous sky. In the surrounding olive groves, Vincent produced a series of 15 paintings. Twisted olive trees again reflected his anguish. He was 37. He had produced hundreds of paintings, but only one had ever been sold. His allowance from Theo was still his only income. The great dream which previously sustained him had evaporated. Though lucid most of the time, he lived in terror of relapses into insanity. As he painted amongst the olive trees, he therefore had a very real and personal awareness of a biblical association with the Mount of Olives. In May 1890, 27 months after his arrival, Vincent van Gogh left Provence for the village of Auvers, near Paris. 10 weeks later, he borrowed a gun and took his own life. Amongst our remarkable legacy from Vincent van Gogh are more than 200 paintings from the south of France, now on view in countries across the world. Each one of Vincent van Gogh's paintings from that period is a distillation of the very essence of Provence.